It starts with a quiet moment, a vanishing. No warning, no cries for help, just an empty space where someone once stood. That's how it always begins. Please, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment so you don't miss our next chilling stories. A person, a life, simply vanishes, as if the world has decided they were never there. The absence is more than a void. It is a question that lingers, unanswered, hanging in the air like smoke. In the small town of Raven Hollow, this was exactly what happened one crisp autumn evening. No one knew it then, but this seemingly isolated event would become the first thread in a dark tapestry. A web of disappearances that stretched far beyond the quiet town's borders. The first disappearance was of a young woman named Elise Turner. She was a college student, bright-eyed and full of promise, with dreams of becoming an architect. Elise had been on her way home from a late-night study session at the library when she simply vanished. The security footage at the library showed her walking out of the building. As usual, her backpack slung over her shoulder. It was just after midnight. She never reached her car. Her parents, frantic and heartbroken, immediately reported her missing. The town was shaken, but it was hard to say why. She was just another college student in a small town, right? It wasn't the first time someone had gone missing. Perhaps she just decided to leave, take off on her own. But the authorities couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Elise's car was still parked outside her apartment. Her phone had been left behind, and her belongings were untouched. Days turned into weeks, and the investigation went cold. The police didn't have any leads. There were no signs of struggle, no evidence of foul play, just an empty bed, an untouched study desk, and the lingering questions of those who loved her. At first, the town accepted the idea that she had left on her own, maybe on some sort of spontaneous adventure. But as time passed, the silence grew louder. The absence of Elise didn't just leave her family grieving. It seemed to leave something in the air, a strange discomfort that no one could place. Then, another person disappeared. The second disappearance was Thomas Reynolds, a local mechanic. He was known for his late-night shifts at the auto repair shop. Thomas, unlike Elise, was a solitary figure. Quiet, a bit gruff, but well-liked by those who knew him. His disappearance, unlike Elise's, was met with little fanfare at first. He'd often disappeared for days at a time, working long shifts and spending hours tinkering with cars. It was easy for people to assume he'd just gone on another one of his spur-of-the-moment road trips. But something was different this time. Thomas didn't take his car. His keys were still on the counter at the shop. His jacket was left on the coat rack, and there was no sign of a struggle. His disappearance seemed eerily similar to Elise's, vanished without a trace, leaving behind only confusion. And that was when the whispers began. A neighbor claimed to have seen Thomas walking out of his house just before he disappeared, carrying a heavy duffel bag, but he didn't appear to be in any distress. What had he been carrying? And why was he gone without a word? The local authorities brushed it off as another isolated incident, but the town was starting to feel a growing sense of unease. The disappearances weren't random. There was something more sinister at play. Months passed and more people went missing, each one with their own unique life, their own reasons for being, yet none of them ever reappearing. A teacher named Andrea Ferguson vanished without a trace. Then an elderly man, George Whitmore, who had been known to take walks every evening. The same pattern began to emerge. Each person had been seemingly normal, no signs of violence or struggle. They all just ceased to exist. The media began to pick up on the story, and the town of Raven Hollow was thrust into the spotlight. Reporters flocked to the small town, but the interviews, the investigations, the theories, nothing seemed to bring any answers. Then, one of the police officers, Detective Claire Jensen, dug deeper. She started reviewing all the missing persons reports, the interviews with witnesses, the oddities that others had missed. Her investigation uncovered something chilling. Each of the missing individuals had been seen at one point or another near the local grocery store. Some had been shopping, others just passing by, but all had made contact with the store's security cameras. However, there was something strange about the footage. A figure appeared in the background in each of the missing person's last known moments. The figure was blurry, moving quickly, always in the periphery of the shot, never fully visible, always fading away. A sense of dread settled over Claire as she watched the footage. Was it just a glitch in the system? Or was someone or something orchestrating these disappearances? As Claire continued to investigate, she uncovered a name, one that kept appearing in the records of the store's employees. A man named Elias Calloway, a former resident of Raven Hollow, had mysteriously disappeared from the town a decade earlier, right before the first of the strange disappearances began. He had been a quiet, unassuming man, but after his disappearance, no one ever heard from him again. Claire dug deeper into Elias's background and discovered something terrifying. He had once worked as a researcher in a secretive government program involving psychological manipulation and the study of human behavior. His research had been focused on using covert methods to influence people's actions, to essentially control their behavior without their knowledge. As Claire pieced together Elias's work and the string of disappearances, a chilling conclusion began to form. Elias Calloway had somehow created a system, an invisible, unseen force that could make people disappear. He hadn't just been conducting research, he had been perfecting a method to erase people from existence, to make them vanish without a trace. And now it seemed that system was being put to use. But the most horrifying discovery of all was yet to come. The truth was even more terrifying than Claire had imagined. Elias had developed a machine, a device capable of creating a localized, controlled blackout in reality itself. It worked by erasing a person from the fabric of existence, manipulating their memories and history to the point where no one could remember them. The machine had been hidden deep beneath the grocery store, and it had been activated every time someone disappeared. The last missing person, a young woman named Sophie Adams, had been the final test subject. Claire discovered that Sophie had been the key to Elias's twisted experiment. He had used her to finalize the machine's design. Sophie's disappearance was the final step. She was erased completely. In a final confrontation with the man behind it all, who had been living in the shadows of Raven Hollow all these years, Claire uncovered the full extent of Elias's manipulations. He had never left the town. He had remained in the shadows, pulling the strings, watching as people vanished. In the end, Claire managed to destroy the machine, but not before one final twist was revealed. As the machine powered down, she saw a final message left by Elias. The unseen hand is always watching, and when you find the truth, you'll understand that it's not just the people who disappear. It's the world itself. The police arrived too late to stop Elias, and he vanished into the ether just as he had made so many others disappear. The town of Raven Hollow was left to rebuild, but Claire couldn't shake the feeling that the machine, or something like it, still existed somewhere out there, waiting to be found. The mystery of the vanishing acts remained unsolved, but Claire had one haunting thought. What if the truth itself was just another layer of the illusion? Claire's mind raced as she stared at the empty, flickering screen where Elias's final message had appeared. The room seemed to close in around her, the air thick with an oppressive weight. The machine had been destroyed, but something told her that the battle was far from over. The sense of finality she had hoped for had crumbled, replaced by the unnerving realization that this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. As she left the basement beneath the grocery store, the shadows felt heavier. The air outside was cold, too cold for late spring. Raven Hollow seemed almost suffocating in its stillness, as if the town itself had been marked by the horrors that had unfolded beneath its surface. Claire's phone buzzed in her pocket, snapping her from her thoughts. She looked down, her heart sinking as she saw the message. "We know what you've done." The anonymous text was chilling, the words barely a warning, more of an accusation. Her hands shook as she typed back, "Who is this?" The screen flickered momentarily, the text message not sending, as if the phone itself were reacting to the fear rising in her chest. That night, Claire slept fitfully. She dreamed of the machine. Its humming, its low pulse, the whisper of voices she couldn't understand. The faces of the disappeared flashed before her, but they weren't like memories. They were alive in her dreams. They beckoned to her, eyes wide with pleading. At first, she thought it was just the stress of the case. But when she awoke, the air in her room was heavy with something she couldn't explain. A suffocating presence that lingered, just beyond the edge of her vision. The following morning, Claire's investigation continued, but it was clear something was different. There was no peace in Raven Hollow, no closure. The town had changed. No one spoke of it directly, but everyone felt the shift, like something had been cracked open, a dark void too large to fill. The disappearances were no longer just a mystery. They were a curse, a presence that had infiltrated the very fabric of Raven Hollow. People began to whisper. The gossip that had once centered on the quiet town now revolved around something more sinister. Claire overheard snippets at the local diner. She saw them, one woman whispered, "The shadows, at the store, at the gas station." She saw them. "They don't disappear." "Not really," another woman chimed in. "They just change." But the most chilling words Claire overheard were from a local teenager, someone who had once gone missing, only to return days later without explanation. "They're here," the teenager said, his eyes wide with something between fear and awe. "They live among us. They know everything. I tried to run, but I couldn't." That evening, Claire drove to the old church, hoping to clear her thoughts. She wasn't sure if it was the atmosphere of the building or the weight of her thoughts, but as she stepped inside, something felt off. The air seemed thick, heavy with a presence that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. She was about to leave when a figure emerged from the shadows at the back of the church. It was Sophie Adams, the final missing person, the last piece of the puzzle. She hadn't vanished. She had returned. But as Claire approached, she noticed something terribly wrong. Sophie's once vibrant face was now pale and gaunt. Her eyes were wide, but they lacked the warmth Claire had remembered. She smiled, but it was an unnatural grin. A grin that spoke more of a dark revelation than happiness. "Sophie?" Claire whispered, almost not believing it. "What happened to you?" Sophie tilted her head, her smile widening. "I'm back," she said, her voice hollow, "but not in the way you think." Claire took a cautious step back. "Where did you go? What happened?" Sophie's eyes gleamed with a strange light as she spoke. "It's not about where I went. It's about what's coming." Her words hung in the air, thick and ominous. Claire didn't know whether to reach for her phone, to run, or to listen to the chilling story that Sophie was about to reveal. Before she could react, Sophie turned abruptly, walking toward the darkened corner of the church where a small, forgotten door stood ajar. "Come with me, Claire," Sophie called over her shoulder. "You'll understand soon enough." Claire had no choice but to follow. The door creaked open, revealing a hidden room beneath the church. Inside, the atmosphere was suffocating, the air thick with dust and a faint, acrid smell. As Claire stepped inside, she noticed the strange symbols etched into the walls, symbols that resembled the same markings on the machine in the basement of the grocery store. Sophie stopped in the center of the room and turned to face Claire, her eyes now completely black, devoid of any human emotion. "They're waiting," Sophie whispered, her voice a mere echo of the girl Claire had once known. "They've always been waiting. The disappearances weren't mistakes. They were the first phase. Now we're entering the second phase." "What are you talking about?" Claire's voice shook. "Who's waiting? What's happening?" Sophie smiled, but there was nothing kind about it. "The unseen hand isn't just Elias. It's bigger than that. It's a force, an ancient, shadowy force that feeds on the souls of the forgotten, the erased. The disappearances, they're just the beginning. They're feeding the force." Suddenly, the lights flickered. The walls seemed to pulse, vibrating with a deep, low hum. Claire turned to the shadows, feeling the oppressive weight of something watching, something that had been waiting for her all along. "This is where it started," Sophie continued, her voice growing more distant, more disjointed. "This is where it will end. But the truth won't set you free, Claire. It will trap you, just like it trapped me, just like it trapped everyone before me." Before Claire could respond, the room darkened completely. Her heart raced in the pitch-black void as the faint sounds of whispers filled the air. The walls closed in, and she heard the soft, crawling sound of something moving across the floor toward her. She reached for her phone, but it was dead. Her breath quickened as the whispers grew louder, closer. "Let it in, Claire," Sophie's voice echoed from the shadows. "Let it consume you." Claire's mind raced as she tried to make sense of everything she had uncovered. The disappearances, the unsettling force, the connection to Elias. Was it all part of some dark, ancient system designed to erase people, to trap them in a void of forgotten memory? Was the truth too dangerous to expose? Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind her, locking her in with the whispers. In a frantic move, Claire shoved her hand into her bag, pulling out a small pocket knife she always carried. She slashed at the air in desperation, her movements wild and frantic. Her heart pounded as the voices closed in around her, whispering her name, calling her into the darkness. "Claire," they whispered. She backed up against the wall, holding the knife with trembling hands. The shadows moved closer, and for the first time, she realized the truth. The force behind the disappearances had no real beginning or end. It was eternal, feeding on fear, on forgotten people, and on those who dared to look too deeply. In that moment, Claire made a decision. She couldn't defeat it. She couldn't escape it. But maybe, just maybe, she could find a way to expose it, to bring light to the darkness. With her last ounce of strength, she plunged the knife into the wall, carving the last symbol into the surface. A symbol that would connect the world of the living with the world of the forgotten. And as she fell to the ground, darkness enveloping her, she whispered to herself, "I will be remembered. We all will be. Never forget, uncovering hidden truths can come with dangerous consequences. And sometimes, the truth itself can trap us in ways we never expected. Some mysteries, once revealed, are not meant to be solved, and they may change us forever." If you enjoyed this story and want more, please like, subscribe, and share to discover even more haunting tales, true crime, and murder mysteries from us.